and as then as a strong effort that provide transparent participation at the event design energy and effective size action battery sense very self-defined environment.
As our time limit is 45 minutes, we would like to utilize the full time frame and start immediately. It is an honor for me to welcome our distinguished panelists who are in the room and joining online. I would like to give a very special warm welcome to Judith Granitz, Ilona's daughter, who joins us online from France. Nice to have you with us, dear Judith. I apologize for starting immediately to invite our speakers. You will find a short bio on the table, at the website and in the chat. Our first speaker is Liberato Bautista, the president of the Conference of Non-Governmental Organizations in Consultative Relationship with the UN, who is joining online from New York. Dear Levi, good morning. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Vienna. I'm joining you indeed from New York. Thank you very much, Ingeborg, for this wonderful event. Excellencies, NGO colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure and honor to join you in this important side event at the 11th session of the Conference of Parties to the UN Convention on Transnational Organized Crime. At the outset, I want to congratulate the organizers of this event, including the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, the Graduate Women International, and Congo, the Conference of NGOs in Consultative Relationship with the UN, of which I am president. Your coming together to hold this event is one more excellent example of NGO good practice. It is what I call the power of co. Co being the principal predicate to the words co-consultation, co-collaboration, and co-cooperation. By practicing consultation, collaboration, and cooperation in their many forms, we as NGOs multiply many times over the impact of the competencies we bring to the multilateral process at the UN and other international bodies. By organizing this event, you as NGO leaders who are invariably accredited to units within the UN system are continuing to amplify civil society voice and presencing that voice so that it is heard loudly and clearly in the halls of decision-making. Beyond voice, events such as these are where you empower human agency, including the agency of many others whom you bring to these meetings so that they can narrate their stories of struggle, the least against transnational organized crime, but many more against outrages to human dignity, violations to human rights, and injuries to the planet that compromise the integrity of the ecological system. Ladies and gentlemen, the narratives NGOs bring to the UN are intrinsic to the global narrative. And we claim our space and our voice in such global arenas, such as COP11 to UNCTAD, not at all as kibitzers or intruders in the international arena, but as crucial players in the international multilateral system, as contemplated by ECOSOC Resolution 1996-31. Your voice, our voice, as NGOs accredited at the UN, are specially charged with the responsibility to contribute to the elaboration of how we, the peoples of the world, might secure human well-being and planetary sustainability. That is the language of Agenda 2030, the language that yokes people and the planet intrinsic to the text of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This is why this event is made more meaningful by dedicating it to someone whose life and work exuded of tenacious witness to the flourishing of human well-being and the sustaining of planetary integrity. That is one of the many ways to sum up the life and work of our dear friend and colleague, Ilona Greenwich, in whose memory we hold this side event. Ilona was the epitome of public service par excellence. She has served in local, national, and international legislative bodies as a public servant, as much as having served humanity as a civil society activist. I have been blessed with the opportunity to work side by side Ilona when she was my vice president for Vienna, when I was president of Congo from 2008. I saw her as the consummate civil society leader who did not intrude the consultative process with insistence on her personal and organizational views. Nay, she always endeavored to bring the best understanding that collective thinking and joint action can bring. That was what she bequeathed us. Her life and work, especially that she no longer walks with us in this earthly life, are exemplary of the tenacity that we as inheritors of her legacy must continually exhibit. And that is the task to ensure that civic space and democratic discourse are secured for we the peoples of our communities and of the world. Ilona worked her darndest best so that the historic intersections of human rights struggles that produced the pantheon of rights we know today, including women's rights and children's rights and many more. Beyond historic intersections, Ilona robustly articulated the intrinsic connections of human rights and environmental rights. She reduced the chasm between the concern for people and the concern for the earth, for the planet, indeed, for the cosmos. Ilona advocated on this and many more for social and planetary justice, cognizant not only of their historic urgency, but also because of their intersectionalities with gender justice. Ilona, if I may say so, helped reduce the anthropocentrism of our theorizing and practice of human rights through her dogged insistence and advocacy for planetary and environmental rights. Let me end this intervention, ladies and gentlemen, by saying that today's focus on combating transnational organized crime, including the elaboration of what might the crime of ecocide constitute and where might it be placed within the slow but expanding international legal framework of protections and cooperation, especially in the context of crimes that affect the environment, might be placed. Thank you very much for this event. It undergirds once more the growing chorus of concern, but also of action by NGOs to stop transnational organized crime, including harm against human beings like human trafficking and harms against the environment like ecocide.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will send you the text for the fuller treatment of the subject, Ingeborg.
Thank you very much, dear Levi, but we are short of time as we have to close sharply at 1:45. And therefore, I turn to the next speaker. It is Helga Conrad, a dear companion here in Vienna and a competent over the years as politician and parliamentarian, combating violence against women and girls, drawing attention to all forms of gender-based violence, such as female genital mutilation, torture by non-state actors, and human trafficking. The focus of Helga Conrad, former federal government minister for women in Austria and current executive director anti-trafficking at the Institute for the Danube region and Central Europe. Helga, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear. Yes. Thank you very much, dear Inge, and thank you very much for the invitation to this event. Ilona Grenitz was a dear colleague and friend of mine as politician, and then afterwards as working with NGOs. And I would we discussed it, that I would focus on my current working experience on human trafficking and the role that civil society had for us, for politicians in this field. I go back to the Stability Pact for Southeastern Europe, European Stability Pact on trafficking, and the task force on trafficking in human beings. This was a political initiative to encourage and strengthen cooperation between the countries of Southeastern Europe, as well as to streamline existing efforts for assisting Southeastern Europe, Europe's political, economic, and security integration into Europe at that time. It was an instrument for coordinating and accelerating the democratic development in the region, with the fight against human trafficking as one main issue. It provided the framework with which all relevant bodies and organizations, and for the first time, several non-governmental organizations. This was really new at that time, and institutions dealing with human trafficking in the region offered their input and expertise. Such an approach enabled to provide governments with a comprehensive picture of the interrelated and complex challenges of human trafficking, and to offer guidance of best practice in anti-trafficking management. Why this focus on Southeastern Europe? At that time, Southeastern Europe was a hotspot on human trafficking. The whole Southeastern Europe and the Balkan routes. In war and conflict and post-war and conflict areas, we see that now in the Ukraine again. The problem of human trafficking is compounded by the instability of civil societies and the weakened rule of law, which gives more scope to criminal activities and organized crime. It goes to the credit of international organizations, and especially to non-governmental organizations and institutions, that they stepped in at an early stage, providing victim protection and assistance, as well as expertise and practical know-how, thus supporting governments in the fight against human trafficking. They knew that the politicians at that time didn't really know, so it was really from the NGOs where we got the information. Very often is from the non-governmental organizations that the victims of trafficking get a positive initial response. This is the same today. This hasn't changed very much, so it's them to do this. For several years, this and assistance by dedicated local NGOs was the only support provided to victims of trafficking. For the first time, we set up an expert coordination team where all relevant international organizations and non-governmental organizations active in the fight against human trafficking could and should cooperate and offer guidance of best practice in anti-trafficking management. This has become a model for many countries, because what we have in European countries and many other countries goes back to this idea to have a coordinated approach. We have task forces or whatever, how you call them, but this goes back to this initiatives. This expert team, which has been developed in close collaboration with those responsible on the spot, developed a regional strategy in form of a multi-year anti-trafficking action plan. Also, this goes back to our work in Southeastern Europe. We have action plans. We make clear that it's a multi-disciplinary approach, that it must comprehensive. we addressed, or in the action plans, everything should be addressed from awareness raising, training, capacity building, law enforcement cooperation, victim protection, return and reintegration, to legislative reform and prevention of human trafficking. This coordination mechanism, which has been based on a comprehensive approach combined with well-considered division of labor, reflecting their fields of experience to avoid needless duplication and competition, has served as a model for other regions and areas faced with similar problems. When we look into the practice of many countries, also European countries, it becomes quite obvious that the protection of fundamental rights of the victims of trafficking takes second place to the promotion of state interests. This has not changed very much, unfortunately. Governments very often see the battle against illegal immigration as their first priority. Therefore, victims of trafficking run the risk of being treated as illegal immigrants and immediately deported to their countries of origin. And even when victims are allowed to stay temporarily in a country, support for them depends to a large extent on whether they are useful for the prosecution and willing to cooperate with law enforcement authorities. As a result, victims are often instrumentalized in the interest of the prosecution. Again, state interests take precedence over the right of victims to protection of their physical and mental integrity. In this context, it is the prime responsibility of international and especially of non-governmental organizations not only to endorse government security interests, but also and especially to include the human rights dimension of human trafficking. The status and protection of the victims deserve particular attention, and states have to assume the responsibility and to guarantee them. In this area, in particular, governments should make use of the experience of and capabilities of non-governmental organizations, which are often more than other bodies, the advocates of the weak and weakest in our societies. Just one more sentence. Last but not least, international organizations and especially non-governmental organizations with the support of so-called donor countries have the potential to assist in providing more and better disaggregated information on human trafficking, for instance, to influence the development of appropriate legislation with regard to human trafficking, to spur an adequate law enforcement response, and to protect trafficked persons. And apart from all this, they can generate the much needed political will. And there I come back to Ilona Grenitz, who had really two heads, so to say, the politician and the NGO head. Thank you.
Helga, thank you very much for this great input in a nutshell. And I see you have a wonderful script. We would like to have the script to put it on the website. Thank you for shortening your time, but we have other speakers very dear to Ilona's topics as well. She was a member of the European Parliament and worked on numerous committees where her profound knowledge of environmental matters was held in high esteem. And she eager was to promote the Aarhus Convention and had a dream to bring environmental crime to the International Criminal Court. This brings me to our next speaker. This is Jojo Mechter, co-founder of Stop Ecocide, to support the establishment of ecocide as a crime in the International Criminal Court. Jojo joins online. Welcome here.
Thank you so much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates and organizers of this event, thank you for this opportunity. I would like to give a concrete example of the influence of civil society advocacy on deterring and preventing transnational organized crime. I'm referring in particular to crimes that affect the environment, an area of criminal activity that has grown to be as lucrative as drug trafficking and is often carried out by the same organized criminal networks, and yet remains significantly under-prosecuted. The story of our advocacy organization, Stop Ecocide International, is the story of the initiative to criminalize mass damage and destruction to nature, now increasingly known as ecocide, as mentioned by our first esteemed speaker. And even before the law is put into place, it is already making a notable impact. This is also a story that honors the memory of a particular woman, the legal pioneer and barrister Polly Higgins, who, like the late Ilona Grenitz, to whom this session is rightly dedicated, committed her life to the protection of the well-being of others and of the natural living world. I first began working with Polly Higgins in 2014. She had already gathered a worldwide following advocating for a crime of ecocide in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. The initiative was beginning to gain diplomatic attention, but was considered too radical to fund. So in 2017, we co-founded a public campaign to crowdfund the work. 5 years on, we are an international NGO at the heart of a fast-growing global movement. Polly is sadly not here to witness the fruits of what she started. We lost her in 2019 to an aggressive lung cancer. But a remarkable thing happened when she died. As her closest associate, I was contacted by lawyers, activists, politicians, and more who didn't want that work to die with her. And so the last 3 years have been a gigantic work of joining dots and of collaborative advocacy. Now we have teams and associate groups in over 40 countries. We work with diplomats, politicians, lawyers, corporate leaders, NGOs, indigenous and faith groups, influencers, academic experts, grassroots campaigns, and individuals all around the world. In 2020, our charitable foundation convened an independent expert panel for the legal definition of ecocide. 12 renowned lawyers and jurists from around the world, co-chaired by British-French barrister Philippe Sands QC and Senegalese jurist Dior Falso. The resulting consensus definition, which was launched in June 2021, has become the de facto starting point for diplomatic, legal, and academic discussions since, and I will very briefly share my screen to show you that definition. Ecocide means unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment being caused by those acts. In the context of this week's conference, that additional threshold, unlawful or wanton, has particular resonance because a significant percentage of the destruction that this crime aims to prevent is, of course, already illegal. Much deforestation, for example, falls squarely into the category of transnational organized crime in the form of illegal logging. Discussion of criminalizing ecocide is now on public record at parliamentary and/or government level in at least 24 states parties to the Rome Statute. Heads of state, faith leaders, and parliaments have called for it, as have NGOs, young activists, and corporate investors. This rapidly growing conversation means that recognition of ecocide is emerging now as a key solution to address global climate and ecological crisis. And it is already making an impact in crime prevention by galvanizing strategic positive change in the corporate world. As an anecdotal example, we have already had a first-hand report of a mining company in Latin America being grudgingly willing to sign environmental agreements because they were shown the consensus definition as a taste of things to come. Indeed, the UN's Race to Zero initiative recently dedicated a whole section to ecocide law in its report called the Pivot Point, launched in New York last month. This report calls for policy and regulation to set new ground rules for the economy, and ecocide law is described in some depth as a driver and influencer of change. In the same week, President Vurobaravu of the Pacific Island nation of Vanuatu became the first head of state to call on the UN General Assembly to support recognition of ecocide as a Rome Statute crime. This story is a huge acknowledgement of the power of civil society advocacy. We believe it will not be long before a formal proposal to recognise ecocide at the ICC will be forthcoming. And following the example of the President of Vanuatu, we warmly invite all state representatives here present to engage positively with such a proposal. Of course, should an in-depth legal and political briefing on the subject be of interest, you have only to say the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Jojo. It's wonderful what you have to report. Our last speakers are Monica Usai, Program Coordinator for the Italian network Libera contro le Mafia, and Francesca Rispoli, member of the National Board of Libero and Research Fellow at the University of Pisa. They are campaigning, civic monitoring, and whistleblowing, different tools to improve anti-corruption from below. The floor is yours.
I'm going to catch this mic on this occasion. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you so much for the great experiences that we already listened up this morning. And I'm here to introduce our organization and our network together with Francesca, because we have a lot of experience from the past, but we got also a lot of greater perspectives for the future for countering this kind of globalized problem as mafia type organizations that we are trying to struggle in Italy since 1995, in particular after the tough violence that we saw in the till the beginning of the 90s in Italy. We got, I think, also a presentation that was there, but no problem. It was just to give you a brief idea of all the concepts. And libera means in Italian free, because the intention is to free our country by mafia type organizations, but not just in the repressive way. We understood the active role of the civil society organizations there, and together with the other subjects, so schools, universities, and trade unions, churches, all kind of churches. And together with them, we are a network of more than 1,600 organizations just in Italy. And today we got also concrete results that we can explain together with my colleagues too. In particular, the two pillars. The first one is the concrete accompaniment of the relatives of the innocent victims of the of these mafias. In particular, the names that we read in Italy and today also in the world on the 21st of March in occasion of the National Day of Memory and Commitment for themselves. There is a lively memory that we are struggling to keep on, because it's not just the testimony of these relatives, but it's also the active role that they got today to witness also, which is this kind of violence. And together with that, in 1996, we got a great experience for pushing up a popular law for the social use of confiscated assets to organize crime and corrupted people. And thanks to this law, today we got an experience that can tell to everybody that thanks also the holistic approach that we are pushing for. So the role of the universities, of the authorities, of all the characters that are together with us, trying to struggle and to propose in particular a new kind of dignity for the people in such kind of territories, so difficult for them. We got more than 800 experiences, concrete experiences that can be explained and show off for all of you there on lands and buildings confiscated and today socially used for social purposes. Just to finish up my first intervention and give the floor to my colleague Francesca. Finally, after 10 years, we understood so well that it was not enough to stay just in Italy. We understood that the networking needs something because of the globalized phenomenon. We need a globalized reaction to this kind of phenomenon. So we get abroad. We started from apparently so distant, but not for the cultural methods. We started from Latin America. So we are in a network with other 60 organizations there all over the countries and then the continent. And today we are also talking actively with European countries and African ones. So it's so important for us because we understood so well that the role of these criminal groups abroad together with other criminal groups, and we would like to push up and get on with our efforts to build up together with other organizations the same opposite relationship together with other organizations yours. So I give the floor to my colleague. I was so briefly, I guess, so to Francesca.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica, for this introduction. I hope that you are hearing me well. And also, maybe you can see my presentation. This introduction allows me to go deep into some of the policies that the association has been carried out in this in last 15 years. In particular, we talk about the fact that Libera in recent years has focused on the link between the mafia and corruption, and we base some activities on this link, also to expand the pool of people that we can reach. In particular, since 15 years ago, Libera has launched some campaigns with the specific demands to highlight the link between mafia and corruption. The first was Corrotti, a campaign that collected 1 million signatures that we took to the President of the Republic, Giorgio Napolitano. It was successful in terms of the involvement of the people, and also for the response that we received from the institution. After that experiences, we decided to deal with the digital tools, which have expanded in a few years, launched the Restarting the Future campaigns, Riparte il Futuro. But the point I want to emphasize today in these few minutes is related to the role of grassroots mobilization in changing the laws, because we can divide our experience in two paths. In some cases, Libera and also the other network that we are between inside our network propose new law. In other experience, we try to implement the already existing law. This is, for example, with the Linea Libera, that is a service. We meet people who can maybe see something wrong to find out together whether they meet the condition to become a whistleblower. Now, this slide, maybe the slide, next one, you can see I just summarize 4 activities that we carrying out to implement and improve the laws in Italy. From our point of view, that is a social point of view. And so we can do this with the university education, but also with the civic monitoring, also with the Linea Libera that I already mentioned, and with a newspaper that is called La Via Libera, that deals with the mafia, corruption, welfare, and environment, also with an international point of view. To conclude this brief presentation, maybe you can see, the last slide. We are using a mixed approach that brings together cultural and welfare tools, because we think, in particular, the cultural tool, we need the cultural tool in Italy because we have recorded a normalization on the mafia phenomenon. Also, thanks to our national surveys. And this normalization is also due to a decrease in the use of violence by organized crime groups. And so for all this reason, I invite you to attend our international event in Palermo at the end of October, which is called the Cross Civil Society in the fight against the global mafia since the Palermo Convention to today, that also we have streaming on our YouTube channel. Thank you for this opportunity and for your attention.
Thank you both for this wonderful insights is not the correct word for this great task you are doing here. And as we are really in time, I would like to give the floor to Elizabeth Francis before I hand over to Anna Albazzi for the closing. Elizabeth Francis represents Graduate Women International, the co-organizer of this event. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ingeborg. Graduate Women International, GWI, is grateful for the opportunity to co-sponsor this side event in memoriam Ilona Krenitz. Ilona was an honorary member of our organization in Austria. She represented us, then the International Federation of University Women, with distinction and great success at the United Nations in Vienna for many years. She advocated so well, so intelligently and determinedly on behalf of all the causes that are important to GWI. She was a very remarkable woman. Thank you, Ilona.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And now I would like to hand over to the chair of the Alliance, the sponsor of this side event, Anna Albazzi del Frate, for some concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Inge, and thank you. I had the opportunity to meet Ilona, and the idea of this event was instant when we learned the sad news, because it is so important to link the action of civil society to champions, to persons who really represent the strength that the communities can have through the initiative, the commitment of some persons who are very motivated, who have very clear ideas, and who know what is important. You know how to communicate, how to prioritize, you know how to bring the important issues to the right stakeholders and move them on. And in this room, we have an amazing collection of people like that. So I'm really grateful to all of you who made it to participate here today. We are here these days to discuss issues related to the implementation of the Transnational Organized Crime Convention and its protocols. In particular, there is the Trafficking in Person Protocol that is very close to the work of many NGOs, and it was also very close to the issues brought by Ilona. But we see that the involvement, strong, effective involvement of civil society is necessary for a broader range of issues. We have heard from Libera the importance of making sure that there is a way to engage communities, to engage civil society, to reassure them also that something is being done, that they are not alone in combating transnational organized crime. We call it transnational organized crime. Of course, locally it may be perceived as mafia, as gangs, as different types of organized criminals. And we also know that there are issues that are not yet being dealt by the convention, such as environmental issues, but they are so important and they are going up into the agenda, and they are being discussed as serious forms of crime, like environmental crimes, and also these require champions like we had from Ilona. So the Alliance was very proud to have the opportunity to organize this event. It is something that we hope can also show to some younger people how it is possible to make a change, to make an important contribution through civil society engagement. And we really hope that this legacy will continue and are extremely grateful to the contribution from Ilona, and thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for these closing words. We were really in time. I apologize that I really pushed all our speakers. So
we have time for
yeah,
questions.
so yeah, we don't see any in the chat. I suppose we have remarks just for yeah, for being present with us and memorizing Ilona's legacy to this topic. And I was very glad that I could have her as a chair on the Sustainable Development Committee to learn from her a lot. And when Ilona handed over to me, she was a very strong mainstay and to back me in this committee. There is a hand raised.
Hello, everyone. I'm listening from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I would like to share with you that Iona was critical in supporting Linda McDonald and myself. My name's Jean Sarson, and coming to Vienna and speaking about the informal networks of organized crime that are committed within families that Linda and I have been working with for 30 years, and the issues of non-state torture. And the chat is disabled on my computer anyway, that's why I couldn't put anything in, but I just wanted you all to know that we appreciated all her work all the way from Canada. So thank you everyone for sharing your information.
Thank you, Jean. This leads that Ilona was the first one to bring this topic to the UN in Vienna. We had a side event. It was the first side event I could attend in 2006, I suppose it was, or earlier. And when I told Ilona that I will have a side event at CCPCJ, she said immediately, "Oh, you have to invite Linda McDonald and Jean Sarson." And I said, yes, there are our prominent speakers at that event. So she really could follow this event from home. Yeah. And now we are really at the end of this.
There's another question.
There's another question. So we cannot read this, but there are a lot of greetings. Yeah, okay. There is one question.
This question, again, this is a great panel. My name is David Ogolo, and I work for an organization called African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, an NGO based in Nigeria. And the question is about the reuse of confiscated assets from Libya. It's good to understand the context in relation to deterring crime. What role? Because government play a major role and citizens. So I would like to know what kind of support that Libya enjoy from government to be able to play this role, and people are able to support the campaign to ensure that crime, assets seized from crime can now be used for projects that will benefit. Is it the victim? And if it is the victim, do you have any framework for identifying the victim? Thanks.
really in 10 seconds, I don't know. And okay, Nigeria is different by Italy, and any other country is different by Italy, and we know that. But at this time, we got several projects for capacity building in a way, and for monitoring, which is the role of the confiscated assets in Europe, in Latin America. And now we are starting also that in sub-Saharan countries, in particular in Africa. And what we know is that where we got an harmonizations of the prosecutors in particular, together with the civil society, is something good sometimes. And you need to capacitate them in particular, first of all, because the active role of the authorities in this case, it's so important. On the other hand, you need to build the capacity also for the civil society organizations to understand which are the victims that we are talking about, and to understand which is the concrete social purpose of this kind of assets. So many times we got the prison and the sale of these assets. It's not something that we like a lot. So for this reason, we are also trying to give this kind of alternative to the people in the ground, but it depends by the framework. And the rule of law in Nigeria is pretty particular than the rule of law that we got in Italy. So it's also, yeah, we need the assessment related to that briefly, but then we go deepen in another.
Thank you very much. And now we are really closing this event. And I thank all the participants in the room and online, and especially our dear panelists for keeping the time so correctly. And thank you, Anna, for closing this session. Thank you all.